Okay, here's the sheet that we've got for you, the one that you sent over to me, and we're going to have to do some things here real quick to make it so that you can record a macro. I'm going to walk you through the steps of what I would do if I were recording this macro. First, you're going to need to show this developer tab, and because there's this record macro function right here, and your Excel 2007 is going to be a little bit different, but you're going to come over to, you'll have a little circle right here instead of a file button. And what you'll do is you'll click that circle and come down and find a thing that says Excel options. Mine just says options. You'll click it and you'll still come up with the same option right here, like the same option window. And I believe in yours, under this general one, it should have something that says show developer tab with a checkbox like this. Mine's a little bit different, but it should be in one of these along the side here. And you should have a checkbox that says show developer tab. After you click that show developer tab, you can go ahead and click OK. And then you'll have this developer tab up here. When you have this developer tab activated, we can go in and do a called record macro. So when we go and we record a macro, it's going to follow the functions and commands that we give this Excel sheet, and then it'll be able to replicate those the next time you need to do the same thing. So we're going to click record macro. When it gives an automatic name of macro 1, I'll just say I'm going to call this workbook editing. If you want to put a shortcut key, you can, every time you hit Control G, then it'll run this macro. If you want to do that, great. If you don't, no big deal. I'm just going to leave it blank. In this drop-down menu, you're going to want to make sure that you store this in your personal macro workbook. If you don't do that, then it'll store it in this workbook. And the next time you go to create a new Excel folder like this, or a new Excel sheet like this, and try to pull up this macro, it won't exist. So make sure you've got it in your personal macro workbook, and you can give it a description saying deleting columns, rounding, and headers. So go ahead and click OK. It says the name I've entered is not valid, and that's because I have a space in between the workbook and the editing. What I need to do is just delete that space and say OK. Now, what we need to do is we need to take care of some of this information. If we were to delete column A right now, we'd be deleting everything in this cell A1, and it has all this information up here above that I'm pretty sure you're going to want to keep. Same goes for this column right here. This date right here is stored, and this date here we want. I think these greater than and less than or equal to signs we're going to need to keep. So this is the way I would do it. I would go in initially and say, I'm going to insert a couple columns here. I'm going to grab this information, move it over a couple, and now we know we're still going to delete column C, D, F, H, and so on. So it's not going to ruin any of this information here, but right now if I deleted column C, I'd lose this date. If I deleted column F, I would lose this. So I'm going to move some stuff around again and make it so that we should be good to go. So now you can still see that we're still recording up here, and if we wanted to stop recording the macro and just to get it to that point, that's not what we want to do. We want to keep recording until we're fully complete with all the functions that we're going to have this do. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take each of these columns, and I'm going to hold down Control so I can select multiple columns at the same time. And then once I've got those all selected, I'm going to right click on any one of the column headers, the letters here up here at the top, and hit delete. And now it's deleted all those, and it's mashed everything over here to the side. So now I can click anywhere to deselect all these rows, and what we want to do is we want to round this information here to these decimal points. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this column, and actually instead of selecting this column, what I'll do is I'll just come up here to the top. I'm going to go to my home tab, I'm going to do the comma number style, and it automatically rounds it to the 1 decimal place. And then we'll do the same for the next 2 columns, it looks like. And we can do this one as well in the same style. Just make that comma. And then this one, you're going to need a few more decimal places. So we'll go comma here, and you want it to come out that far. And these two look the same, so we're going to do the same thing with them. Give them the next decimal place. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to move all this information that we moved over earlier. I'm going to move it back to its rightful spot. Delete these columns. And now you got the same basic shape as what you've got. Now you can tell that some of this information is mashed. Over here you got some, number signs going on. You can't quite read any of these things over here. And these, technically, these names you put in, but I didn't. So if we were to run this macro again on a blank worksheet, none of this would be here. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to retype all this information so that the macro knows, as we're recording right now, the macro is going to record me typing in these headers. So I'm going to say breed cross. I'm going to say age, percent living, percent condition, percent 7-day, GPD, weight, BFC here, got AFC here, and we have sold here. So now it's in there, in the macro, it's recorded me typing those in those column headers. So now the only other thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to take each of these columns, I'm going to take B through J and double click. When I get this little line up here at the top, in between the 2 columns, if I double click, it's going to do what they call auto fit. And it auto fits the column to the length of the data. And so it'll take the widest amount of information, like this number here is the widest, and it made that column just wide enough to keep all that information. If I do that here on column A, it's going to stretch it out way past all this settlement information and so on. So instead of doing that, I'm just going to bring it out a few pixels to make sure that we get this breed cross information in there and this information down here. As far as that goes, I think we should be good to go. And this macro is going to do everything that you need it to do. So I'm going to come back to the developer tab, and I can hit stop recording. Also, there's a little button down here at the bottom that does the same thing. It's a little square, and it says that macro is currently recording. Click to stop recording. You can either click either one, and it doesn't matter. But we'll go ahead and click stop recording. Now, I've got another sheet over here. It's basically the same sheet as what we just edited. And now it's got all that other information that is still in there that we need to get rid of. So now we can go over and click this button that says macros on our developer tab. So if we were on the home tab, we just click the developer tab, come over to our macros, and it says this is in a personal workbook called workbook editing, which is the one that we just created. And when I click run, what it's going to do in the background is it's going to do all those commands that you and I just did. So we'll hit run. And it went through and it made all those different things the way they ought to be. And so right here, what it did is it changed that date to a number format because we formatted this column as a number. But what we can do is we can just come back over here and call it a date. And it'll go back to the way it was. But other than that, everything else here is right about the way you want it. And we're not going to save those changes for now. I'm going to open up this other one that has a little bit less information there, and it's probably a little bit more like what you see when you come in. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and run this macro and go back to the developer tab, hit macros. There's our personal workbook editing. All this tells us right here is it's in our personal Excel workbook, and the name of the macro is workbook editing. So we're going to say run. Going to take all that information, and you'll notice that it's stuck in the title where the title wasn't there before, and changed our date there. when you initially record this macro on your computer, you can make sure to change this back to a number, and you won't have to do this every time like I'm doing right now. But anyway, I think that's about what you wanted to see, so I'm going to go ahead and stop recording, and I'm going to email this over to you, and you give me a call when you've had a chance to review it.